Hello everyone, welcome to Homework Help. If you find the videos useful, please subscribe to the channel. So in this video, we'll solve this problem using the concepts of cross product. So as per the problem, calculate the area of the parallelogram formed by the following pairs of vectors. So let's start with part A. So the formula for area of parallelogram from vectors that form it is magnitude of cross product of vectors A and B. So the first step is to find the cross product of given vectors A and B. Now to find the cross product, we should stack the y, z, x and y components of these two vectors. So for the first vector, the y component is 1, the z component is 0, the x component is 1, and the y component is 1. For the second vector, the y component is 0, z component is 1, x component is 1, and y component is 0. Now we can find the x, y, and z components of the cross product of these two vectors. So let's start with the x component. And for the x component, we should cross multiply the y and z components. So we start with 1 times 1 minus 0 times 0. So 1 times 1 is 1. So I get x equal 1. Now we can find the y component. And for that we should cross multiply the z and x components. So we start with 0 times 1 minus, and next we do 1 times 1. I get y equals negative 1. Now we can find the z component, and for that we should cross multiply the x and y components. So we start with 1 times 0 minus 1 times 1. So I get z equals negative 1. So that means the cross product of vectors a and b is the vector 1, negative 1, negative 1. Now we have to find the magnitude of this vector. And for that, we'll square the components of this vector, add them, and apply square root to the sum. So the magnitude is square root of 3. So that's the area of parallelogram formed by vectors in part A. Now we can analyze part B. So we'll use the same formula for area of parallelogram. So we'll start by finding the cross product of the vectors, and for that we'll stack the y, z, x and y components of these two vectors. So for vector A, the y component is negative 2, z component is 3, x component is 1, y component is negative 2. For vector B, the y component is 2, z component is 4, x component is 1, and y component is 2. Now we can find the x, y, and z components of the cross product of these two vectors. So let's start with the x component, and we should cross multiply the y and z components. So we start with -2 times 4 minus 2 times 3. So I get x equals -14. Now we can find the y component. So we should cross multiply the z and x components. We start with 3 times 1 minus 4 times 1. So I get y equals -1. Now we can find the z component by cross multiplying the x and y components. So we start with 1 times 2 minus 1 times -2. So I get z equals 4. So the cross product of vectors a and b is vector -14, -1, 4. Now we have to find the magnitude of this vector. So for that, we should square the components of this vector, add them, and apply square root to the sum. -14 square is equal to 196. And the sum of these numbers is equal to 213, and square root of 213 is equal to almost 14.6. So this is the area of the parallelogram formed by vectors in part B. So these are the steps you have to keep in mind to solve a problem like this one. So I hope you'll find this video useful. Please share it, like it, and subscribe to Homework Help. Thank you very much and have a nice day. Bye.